Unlike the Philadelphia 76ers, Philadelphia Eagles, Philadelphia Phillies, Philadelphia Flyers didn't really have that many, well, high picks in this NHL draft, but that doesn't mean it wasn't effective. And we're here to talk about it. Caleb Weiler and Brian Wright are both here. It's time to break down the Flyers draft. Yeah, offseason is underway now. We just got our draft done. What do you guys think?
I was definitely happy with the results of the draft. At first, when they drafted their first-round pick, I was like, who? But the more I looked into him, it seems like he's going to be a good all-around two-way forward. He's been playing in the KHL. He has some history with some other Flyers prospects. And I was really happy that they loaded up on other forward prospects, as well as drafting the first goalie off the board in the second round, too. So I think overall it really helped stockpile some holes that we have in the Philadelphia Flyers prospect system.
Yeah, ever since Ron Hextall's taken over the GM mantle, he's been his mantra throughout the whole thing has been quietly effective, and they're stocking the farm system without having to make a huge splash. He's all about player development, and that's what they did in this year's draft. The number one selection there, Germain Rutsov, I believe is how you say his name, a young player, a good two-way forward. They traded down and picked up an extra second-round pick and knew that they would be able to get him at 22. So good value there from Hextall. And he also did a nice job of using a lot of the picks on forwards, knowing that the team has some issues with young forward players. We have some in the NHL, but the minor league system is primarily full of defensemen, and so Hextall did a good job of stocking up the farm club with forward prospects.
Yeah, good value. That's something you're going to hear a lot tonight. So what the Flyers did, they moved back 4 spots from 18 to 22. So they got an extra second-round pick out of it. That extra second-round pick wound up being Pascal Laberge at number 36 overall. So they got a high second-round pick just to move 4 spots back. So good value. German Rutsov, Caleb did a good job talking about him earlier. Now, the more popular picks that people wanted were sniper Kiefer Bellows and Julien Gauthier. What did you guys think of that? Would you guys would have preferred going that way, or are you guys cool with Rutsov?
Well, like you said, you got to think about value. You can't really draft players in the NHL based on need in your current roster, because say you draft a left wing prospect, he might not be up in 3 years, and so Hextall does in the draft, like you said, he gets good value for his picks. So, if you think you can get a top 10 talent in Rutsov at 22, instead of taking Kiefer Bellows at 16 or Gauthier at 22 or 17 or 18 or wherever they would be at, I think it was good value based off of what he projects to be as a top 10 talent moving forward in his career.
Yeah, I think when the Flyers, as I was watching the draft, when the Flyers pick came up at 18, a lot of the pundits and some of the Twitter fans, so to speak, were saying that they were going to have to take Bellows because he's there at 18 and he fits a need. Like you were saying, he's a scorer, and the Flyers don't have any, not to say they don't have any, but they don't have a lot of depth at the wing position for scoring, and the scouting report on Bellows is all he does is score goals. But when they traded down to take Rutsov, that was a typical Ron Hextall move. He wants to bring players along. He wants the complete package. And like you said, the NHL, much like a lot of the, I think the NHL draft is similar to baseball in that you don't really you only have Crosby coming along once in a generation who's an absolute slam dunk. Lots of these kids, it's going to take them 2 to 3 years to get to the NHL. So you want to take the more seasoned, better, more all-around prospect, and I think that's what Hextall did. And he knew he could get an extra pick out of it, so smart move.
Yeah, Rutsov was a guy that fell a little bit of controversy there with him. Good thing Chip Kelly wasn't making any draft picks because he wouldn't have fit the team mantra. But, yeah, because scheme is, talent beats scheme or whatever the fuck is. I already forget already. But I just completely made myself look like an idiot.
Yeah, but at this point, who cares, right?
Yeah, exactly. I already look like a human jar of mayonnaise, so
Forget Chip, man. He gone.
Yeah, yeah, you're gone. All right, so yeah, let's talk about the controversy with Rutzoff because he did fall to number 22, and he taking that chance on him at all the way back there in the first round. What do you guys think of that controversy? It's like doping, right?
Yeah. So basically, what had happened and what the players were describing it as is the coaches gave them some kind of pill with their breakfast, and they said, "This is going to be good for you. Take it." So you're a 17, 16-year-old kid. You're not going to say no to your coach. And so they all ended up getting caught up in a doping scandal. So whether that's true or not, if they knew what they were taking or not, that's the story that came out. And Ron Hextall always said that he did his due diligence in scouting this guy. The name of the scout is escaping me, but there was a scout who was Russian on the Flyers roster who spent a lot of time with Rubtsov and really dug into his character. And so what Hextall did was his due diligence to figure out what kind of person he was, what kind of person he knew he'd be taking, and being able to get that top 10 talent at number 22 might probably look like a steal in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I agree. You never quit, like you said, when you're 16, 17 years old playing for the U18 Russian national team, you're not really in a place to disagree with your coach. So that it wasn't really his, this isn't a character issue with Rutzoff. This is an issue with the coaching acumen or morals of the Russian national team. I don't think it reflects poorly on him. And quite frankly, I trust Ron Hextall. And these professional hockey teams do their due diligence with every player they're going to pick. And if they deemed, that this wasn't an issue with him, there was no reason not to take him, especially if he is a top 10 talent as he had been scouted as. You're getting him at 22. Again, great value. That seems to be our theme for this show.
Yeah, there you go. So let's talk about the second round picks now. You get LaVerge, you got Hart, and you got Allison. Which one's the guy that you're kind of high on out of those three? And yeah, tell me why.
So I'm probably going to go with Hart because you can never have too many goalie prospects. He was the first goalie prospect taken off the board. In addition to him, we now have Lyons, who's playing goalie for, I think it's Yale or Harvard or one of those Ivy League schools, and he's shutting it down over there. We have Stolars, Sandstrom, and a couple other people down in the mix. So you can never have too many goalie prospects, and getting the highest touted goalie prospect, I think that, again, good value. So that's probably where I would go with my favorite pick in the second round.
Yeah, I actually agree with Caleb. The goaltending in the NHL is like pitching. Like we said, you can never have too many arms. You can never have too many goalies. And we know the history with the Flyers goaltending situation over the past 20, 25 years. So nabbing Hart early in the second round, first goalie off the board, great pick.
Yeah, baby, sexy hexy at its finest. There you go. All right, let's move on to an extension that not too many people liked. Radko Gudas got a 4-year, about $10 million extension, $3.35 million a season. Well, this is why we're the bitter birds, because we're smarter than you. So you guys are going to tell everyone why it was a good extension.
I'm glad you said it and not me, because I'm not going to say that I'm smarter than everybody else, but you can say that about me. I loved the extension because after this year, it's only we're losing contracts on Streit, on Schultz, and on Del Zotto. So all three of those guys are going to be gone unless we re-sign them, which I don't see happening. I think Del Zotto gets traded this year. I think Schultz may get re-signed if he comes back at a deal to be a veteran presence. But keeping Gudas around is going to be keeping around that enforcer-type defenseman that you're going to need to protect players like Ghost and Provorov and Sanheim, who are two-way puck-moving defensemen that really don't have that I'm-going-to-kill-you look that Gudas has. So I like the extension. I think that fills a need in the top four that you're going to have when all the young guys come up in a couple years.
Yeah, I agree. I love that move by the Flyers. I think Gudas is an underrated, we talk about guys that are prototypical Flyers. He's one of them. Yeah, he's gonna take this stupid penalty from time to time, but he's mean. He wants to punch you in the face. He blocks shots. He scores the occasional goal. He's gonna be a great leader eventually. He's gonna be because he's young, but he's gonna be a great leader for the Provorovs and the Sanheims and the Morans that are gonna be coming up soon. I think it's outstanding. And you're gonna need, like you said, you're losing some of the other. You're losing Strite. You're losing Delzato, although I think they're going to keep Delzato. He might get traded, but I like Delzato. He gives you some offense. I think they're going to keep him around. But Gudas, great move. I think that's a fantastic signing by Hextall.
Yeah, I like Delzato, but the problem is I think he's going to price himself out on the Flyers because he's probably going to want like a 5 or 6 year deal around $6 million if he plays the same way that he's playing at. I think he's just going to price himself out, and that's why the Flyers are going to trade him because you're going to need to sign Ghost. And then eventually, in 2 or 3 years, you're going to need to sign Provorov and Sanheim to their bridge deals too. So you can't really, lock up that cap in someone like Delzato.
This is why we're the bitter birds. Knowledge.
Yeah, it's great though from the fan. I mean, this is the Philadelphia fan base, so we hate everything. Man, everything that happens pisses us off, makes us bitter. But hey, you know what? This should be a guy that we like, man. This is like your prototypical kind of Philly type of guy, lunch pail guy that you like. He blocks shots, all that stuff that Caleb and Brian were talking about. Why do you think there was such hatred toward this extension?
I think a lot of people liken the way Radko Gudas plays to the way Zach Rinaldo played, and a lot of people hate Zach Rinaldo.
Oh yeah.
I hate Zach Rinaldo. I still can't believe Hextall turned what was once a 7th-round pick in Zach Rinaldo into a 3rd-round pick. And, that just blows my mind, that Don Sweeney of the Boston Bruins was stupid enough to trade for him. But that's besides the point. So I think people see Radko Gudas as somebody who stirs the pot a little bit and is going to beat on people and take questionable hits, questionable penalties. But I think you kind of need that on the back end or else you're going to get pushed around. So while people may think he's kind of like Zach Rinaldo-esque, I think it's kind of important to have that on the team, especially in a defensive role.
I agree. Yeah, you need some toughness, And while Zach Rinaldo did provide some toughness, he also provided an exceptional level of stupidity and a reputation that preceded him. Radko Gudas doesn't quite have that reputation that Zach Rinaldo had. He might acquire it by taking stupid penalties over the next couple of seasons, but he hasn't done that yet. And he's too valuable in the defensive half of the ice where Ronaldo really wasn't. Gudas will fight. He'll fight if he needs to. He blocks shots. He's very good at playing at doing his job. When Ronaldo was basically all Ronaldo was a pain in the ass.
Let's move on to some other news. Really cool news coming out NHL today. Eric Lindros and Pat Quinn are heading to the Hall of Fame. So that's really cool news. Took Lindros 6 years, but he's finally there. He's gotten in. So what are you guys' thoughts on that?
So Lindros was a little bit before my time, and before I start talking about Lindros, I'm just going to say my man Paul Correa was snubbed from his first Hall of Fame ballot. All right.
Well, that's why his jersey's hanging.
Yep, that's why it's Correa today, because he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. So does Lindros, but just got to get my point in. So Lindros, at the time, they were calling him the next one after Gretzky. He was supposed to be the next wing Gretzky, that generation's Gretzky, Crosby, McDavid, whatever player you want to like him to. That's how good he was supposed to be. And I think for a short period of time, he did live up to his name. He took the Flyers to the finals. He won league MVP one year. He scored way over a point per game. I think his career average was something like 1.14 points per game. So I think he definitely deserves to be in the Hall because in the NHL, championships aren't everything because one player can't carry you to a championship like LeBron James can in the NBA. It's more of a team sport in hockey, and I think even though he had a short career at 8 years, he had a lot of impressive stats, and it was his 6th time up for vote into the Hall. So I'm glad he finally made it in.
So I love this by the NHL inducting the Big E into the Hall of Fame. I know my man Caleb there, you're a little younger than me. I'm going to be 32 next year, so I was watching Lindros in the mid-'90s through his whole time with the Flyers. I'll tell you what, that guy was an absolute beast. When he was healthy, he was there was so much hype about him coming out into the draft. You could compare him to a LeBron or a Ben Simmons, and he was totally different than what the NHL had been before he was drafted. He was big, he was powerful, but he was also graceful, and he could score. And he was an absolute monster for the Flyers when he was healthy. But like you said, this short career, he played 760 games, he scored 372 goals and 493 assists for 865 points. He had the most impressive thing about him was he had 200. His plus minus rating for his career was 215, which is outstanding, and he had 46 game-winning goals. I don't know, like I used to have season tickets to the Flyers right around the time the Wells Fargo Center opened, then the Core State Center. I remember going to games with my dad where we would sit in the concourse before the game and listen to Lou Nolan read off the scratches. If Lindros was out because of his numerous injuries, I've never been more deflated to go to a game and see that a player wasn't in the lineup than I was with Lindros, because you knew there was such a drop-off on that team without him.
Thanks, Brian, for taking all my stats.
Sorry.
Bitch.
I love Eric Lindros, man. That guy was a beast.
All right, well, here's what I got. Well, one-time Hart Trophy winner, finished in the top 10 voting 5 times. Now, here's the thing about his career, obviously, the concussions. So, 13-year career. He only played in over 70 games just 4 times. Wow, that's crazy. So, that's obviously, kind of hampered things. Let's say he didn't have the concussion problems. Could he have been that kind of Gretzky type of player?
I think if you put him in today's NHL, he lasts a lot longer than he did in Scott Stevens' NHL. I mean, Scott Stevens personally ended the career of many a player. Eric Lindros, Paul Kariya, a lot of other guys that he caught them with their heads down. And I think stuff like that doesn't really fly in the NHL today. He would get 10, 20, 30-game suspensions. And not only was Lindros a great shooter and a great passer and play the game, but he used his body a lot. And like I said, he was before my time. I'm only 23 years old, so he only played for the Flyers until I think 97 or 98, something around then. So I was still a little kid. But seeing the highlights, you see how he threw his body around, was able to use his body in order to play the game the right way. So you give a guy with that size body enough skill and speed that he had, he would be phenomenal in today's NHL. So I think without the concussions, he definitely would have been up there with the greats like Gretzky and Howe and Crosby.
Oh my God! His career was both exhilarating and tragic because the injuries just ruined what could have been an unbelievable. I mean, the guy made the Hall of Fame only playing in 8 seasons. If he had played as long as Mark Recchi had been able to play, who also got snubbed, if he had been able to play as long as Mark Recchi had played, his stats would put him up as one of the all-time greats.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Pat Quinn now, just real quick. He another former Flyers head coach, passed away in 2014. Coached the team 1978 to 1982. He went 141, 73, and 48. That included a 35-game unbeaten streak in 1979-80 season. So really crazy there. During his 15-year coaching career, he won a pair of Coach of the Year awards, guided the 1980 Flyers and 1994 Vancouver Canucks to the Stanley Cup Finals. So let's talk about the career of Pat Quinn.
Yeah, I don't know too much about Pat Quinn, but from what I've read and what I've seen, it just seems like he was a great coach. Really took whatever team he had to the next level. Like you said, that 35-game unbeaten streak, like I'm pretty sure that's still in vogue today. Like I don't think anybody's beaten that. I think the Blackhawks came close last year or a couple years ago. But like being able to coach a team to 35 straight wins is such a feat, especially when overtime losses were not a thing back then. It was either you won or you lost. And so you can just see the prowess of Pat Quinn. I think he definitely deserves to be in the Hall.
Yeah, Quinn was a great coach, and like you've mentioned all the stats. I mean, the guy had a knack for getting the best out of his players, and the 35-game unbeaten streak is up there in NHL lore. I don't think that will ever be topped. So certainly a worthy Hall call.
All right, one more question for you guys. So now, Caleb already talked about Paul Kariya, but who are some other snubs you thought deserve to be in the Hall but aren't in there yet?
Brian mentioned Mark Recchi already. That guy, I think he's won 2 Stanley Cups. I think he's produced at over a point per game rate for his career. He was with the Flyers for a long time. I think he played for the Penguins and the Bruins as well, and a couple other teams. So obviously, in addition to my man Paul Correa, who is just a beast, Mark Recchi, I think, deserves to be in the Hall as well. I think they'll both get in at some point, but I think it's going to take a little bit for that to happen.
I like the Paul Correa pick, but I have to go with Recchi because guys don't last 22 years in the NHL anymore. It just doesn't happen. And everywhere he's gone, he's been productive, and he's been traded at the deadline a handful of times. And when he has been traded at the deadline, the team that acquires him has gone on to make the playoffs, or he got traded to the Hurricanes in 2006 at the deadline. They won the cup. He played for the Bruins when they won the cup in 2011, and he won the cup with the Penguins, I believe, in either 91 or 92 when they had Lemieux and Yager. But the guy was just an absolute bull. He was outstanding for the fact that he wasn't very big. But that's a guy that you want on the ice and in the locker room.
All right, before we wrap up the show today, let's talk about some of the other draft picks in the NHL draft. Well, at least Austin Matthews. So let's talk about Austin Matthews real quick. Just how good he is, being number 1 overall pick. Kind of compare him to some of the other number 1 overall picks over recent years. And who do you think really stood out in the draft? Which team do you think did really well?
Okay, so Austin Matthews, an American-born player. I think he was playing in the Swiss League, which is another professional league over in Sweden. And I think the main difference between Austin Matthews and last year's number 1 overall pick, Connor McDavid, to show the difference in skill level, is the Maple Leafs were actually taking offers on the number 1 overall pick, as opposed to when the Oilers had the number 1 overall pick last year, they would not listen to anything. So Austin Matthews is obviously a very good player, but probably not nearly as good as the generational talents such as McDavid and Crosby. And some say he might have even gone behind Jack Eichel in last year's draft. So you wanted us to say someone who did really well in the draft. I'm actually going to flip that question and talk about Columbus, who went with Dubois at number 3 instead of taking Puljujarvi, who ended up falling to Edmonton. And I'm so mad at them for that because Puljujarvi is going to be a huge talent playing on the wing for either Ryan Nugent-Hopkins or Connor McDavid in the next couple of years. So winners, Edmonton; losers, Columbus.
Yeah, I agree. There's not a whole lot more I can add to that except to say, you illustrated the difference between a potential can't-miss prospect in Connor McDavid and an Austin Matthews, who is very good, but not quite on the same level as those generational guys. Winners and losers, I would also go with Edmonton and possibly St. Louis for shipping out Brian Elliott.
Okay. All right. Any final thoughts on anything we talked about today?
Final thoughts, I'm hoping that Rubtsov can get out of his KHL contract and come over here and play in the AHL. Get some mentoring from Provorov, who speaks Russian and English. Rubtsov only speaks Russian, and maybe can say, cheesesteak. So he doesn't really have a huge English vocabulary, so I'm hoping we can get him over here as soon as possible, get him used to the North American game, and see what he can do for us.
I think the Flyers had a very good draft. The Sixers nabbed Ben Simmons. The Eagles got Carson Wentz. Philly's got Moniak. I think the future is bright for all 4 major sports teams, and the Union are also in first place. I think things are looking up for all of our teams, which we haven't been able to say in quite a while.
You had to get that Union in there.
Always do.
Get in there. We'll be doing a show tomorrow on the Union by themselves. So hopefully we get more than 10 fucking views on that show. That's what I'm hoping. That's the goal. All right, so we'll see. For Caleb Weiler, Brian Wright, I'm Adrian Fedke. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let us know in the comments section below. Did you like what the Flyers did? Did you like the Gudas extension? Did you not like it? Do you guys disagree with us? Do you think we're idiots? Let us know in the comments section. We're out of here. Later.
Yeah.